How are you?
Good. Thanks for jumping along.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
It's so give us an introduction. I think everybody knows you as obviously as Greg. So go ahead.
Yeah, so my name's Gregor. I live next to you in Scotland, just east of Glasgow. My background is a kind of developer. I've recently, I think I worked out there earlier on, 281 days into learning Azure from scratch. So in the last 281 days, I've kind of sat a lot of Azure stuff and learned Azure in my spare time, not even during my job. So I've not really been doing Azure day to day. So I've spent a lot of time learning Azure. So today we're going to talk about learning Azure, kind of the tips and tricks, sitting exams, what to expect, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got a fair bit of experience. I've sat maybe 12 exams, I think it is.
Wow.
So, yeah.
To be honest, obviously we've spoken Twitter quite a bit, and you're some man. Like when it comes to motivation, like don't get me wrong, I'm motivated. I think I like to think I'm motivated, but like you take it to a new level. Because you've done like administrator exams.
Yeah, so I've got a list of them. Yeah, I've done the solutions architect one, the DevOps developer exam, security engineer, administrator, data fundamentals, and the fundamentals. So the reason why I started doing exams was if you start to try and learn Azure from scratch, it's such a big topic. You don't really know where to start. So you kind of think, like, where will I start? So if you start and pick an exam, that's kind of what I did. I picked the administrator exam and just thought, right, I'll start with that. Looked at the learning topics and kind of just went from there. So you've got to really pick a starting point. Now I always advise that you start off with Azure fundamentals, which we'll probably come to later on. But yeah, start off with the fundamentals exams and then go from there.
Yeah, the fundamentals is really good. What made you jump from nothing in Azure to, you've basically completed Azure, like done?
Yeah, so I was working at JP Morgan in Glasgow in a bank, and they were doing their own cloud thing. And I'm a Microsoft background, as you know. I'm kind of been a Microsoft guy all my days, going back 20 odd years. So bit of a Microsoft fanboy. So I just decided, right, I need to learn Azure. Before I started learning Azure, I had a wee look at AWS and was like, I don't even know what they've all got like code names for things. So I was like, this is pretty complicated. Azure looks pretty straightforward. I'll learn that in my spare time because everyone's going cloud. We all kind of know that everyone's going cloud. Everyone wants to move to the cloud and save money and kind of get off of on-prem. But yeah, that was kind of the motivation. And I just decided to start looking at exams. I just timed it well. The beta exams were coming out after like 2 months of me just trying to learn Azure. So it was good. I was just lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. And I did actually fail my first couple of exams, which was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. And I had realised that by studying as much as I was doing, so I was doing 2 hours a night study. I realised I was learning stuff and I was just getting hooked because I really love learning stuff. I mean, I'm what I'm like on Twitter. I just can't stop learning. If I'm not sitting in an exam, I'm getting twitchy. I'm actually doing another one just now. I'm thinking,
you sure it's not Twittery?
Far too much Twitter. Yeah.
It's funny because I had a fairly similar experience. Like I've been kind of lucky. Obviously, I come from an ops background, as you know, Gregor. So I've kind of been lucky in that I've had a lot of exposure to cloud computing and whatnot. And it's funny because obviously I come from originally, like owning your own data center, having to, rack stuff. And I actually did a webinar recently with Paul Broadwith from Chocolatey. And we were joking actually about it because what happened was I had a server spin up, right, using an ARM template, some AZ, some Azure CLI, creating resource scripts, so creating an entire infrastructure stack from scratch. And then installing something like 23 applications, and this included SQL Server, Visual Studio, VS Code, Kubernetes, everything, right? It was like everything, and this is all coming in from a Chocolatey feed. So this is all happening in Azure, pulling everything in, and this in its entirety, it took 29 minutes, right? That sounds like quite a lot, but Visual Studio, obviously I kind of started in ops, moved into kind of DevOps, and it's like if you install Visual Studio, it used to take you a day just to install Visual Studio, and it's funny because I took a bit of because I was getting grumpy. I'm like, this is taking so long. I'm like, this needs to be faster. And it's funny because what wound up happening there was I done something, and it would take 29 minutes, and I'm there like, wait a minute, this used to take 3 months. It's like, you would get the request for the server. So you'd have to then go to Dell or HP or IBM, buy your server. You would have to, spec up your server. That would take 6 weeks to turn up. You would then go and rack it, get your static IP for the remote management system, configure RAID 5 or RAID 10 or whatever the standard was. Then you do this, assign the static IP to the server, install the OS, add it to the domain. And then at that point, then you could install SQL or Oracle or web server. And, I was sitting there, I was like, and it's good because to go back to what we're chatting about, like for me, obviously I've been lucky enough to use Azure since about 2013. Because what it was I had that traditional data center approach. So we were automating some of that stuff. So that was, I was in London. I was living in London at the time. So we had data centers all dotted around London. It was highly available. And it was interesting because I remember looking at Azure and I was like, this is awesome. And I was like, I don't think it was quite right for me yet at that time. But I moved out to Australia, and then I was heading up a team out there, a technical services team. It's basically hosting deployments. And it's funny, obviously, I work at Octopus, and that's when I started getting it. Actually, Octopus was a bit before that. But like that, I couldn't afford to pay for the data center space. So at that point, that's where Azure was like, wait a minute. So I then started up spinning. I started off obviously with infrastructure as a platform. Then it went to, obviously, then you started to see PaaS as well. And it's funny because it started my big, my certification journey. It was back in about 2005, actually. Because it's funny because what happened was I done chemistry, physics, and maths at uni. And I was like, and I'm a hands-on sort of person. I kind of went done pharmaceuticals for a couple of years, and I was like, this isn't for me. I was like, I need to do something. So IT, I was running IRC networks when I was 16, and it was something that was always like really interesting to me. But jump forward, I had hair at that point. I did. It was long and luxurious. Yeah, it was. Honestly, I'll show you pictures afterwards. I've got them all backed up. I'm not going to lose any of those pictures. But anyway, it's funny because my certification kind of started in 2005, 2006 because I bought a training program from a training partner, and it's one of the things I want to talk about a little bit later. But I paid something like £1,800 for this training, and that's a lot of money. But it got me in the door for my first interview into help desk in Glasgow. I got the job, and then from there I kind of worked there for about 2 years. I'd done my Microsoft Certified Desktop Support Technician, or which is known as the MCDST. That was like a week-long course that they ended up actually paying for in the end to do hands-on, which was great. And then I moved to London, and then from there I jumped into system administration. And then I went through what obviously used to be called the MCSA, MCSE. I didn't quite go as far as MCSE, but I went to MCSA plus a couple other exams. And then that was it. I kind of like left it there. I did smash through them, like a bit like yours, not 12. I think I'd done like 4 or 5, and then obviously the DST. And it's funny, I kind of put it on the back burner, and then I reignited it this year. It's kind of like one of those ones that's me sitting about, and then I done the fundamentals. I love the fundamentals. I really.
The fundamentals is probably my favourite exam so far. Which is weird.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, what exam do you want to start with? And I always say the fundamentals exam. For several reasons, because you might not have done an exam since school. You might not have done your MCSD like me, or your MCSE. If you've not done that, you don't really know what to expect. So it's always good to kind of start with a fundamentals exam for several reasons, which we'll come back to. But yeah, I was the same as you. I did my MCSD developer exams, and I hadn't done anything for 10 years. So finally I came back to them to start the Azure journey. But the fundamentals exam wasn't around, or I would have started with that, because I kind of did the fundamentals almost last. And I just did that because I wanted to kind of see what it was about, so that I could help people say, right, definitely go for that exam. But now just definitely start off with those exams, definitely.
Yeah, I think I'm the exact same. To be honest, it's funny, like, I think there's a misconception. Like, I looked at the fundamentals and I'm like, I've been doing, like I did, there was a little bit where I was like, I got a little bit cocky. But I was looking at it, I was like, do I really need to do this? And I was like, how I approach it is the first thing I do when I start learning is I book the exam.
Well, that's advice that I would always suggest.
Yeah, book the exam. First thing I do, because you've then got an endpoint. Like you can push it back. You can push it back. Obviously, because obviously I'll go into that in a little bit because I made a bit of a mistake. But like that, book the exam, particularly the fundamentals. If you've got a strong, like the fundamentals course of the AZ 900, is really aimed at people who are maybe not that familiar with cloud. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny because like salespeople, people marketing, like obviously we work with, like I actually, because there's no real hands-on, it's just a lot of knowledge, and that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, for salespeople and non-developers and that kind of, because they hear all these buzzwords, and it's good to kind of try and learn about what does it actually mean and what is available to people who use Azure. So it covers ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's more because that's the thing. It's like it's kind of what cloud is, the benefits of cloud. You know, some of the services, platform as a service versus, say, infrastructure as a service. And it is. I did look at it, and do you know, honestly, like the thing that got me was the edge cases. Like I was a little skeptical, but I was like, I'm doing it. I want to kind of start fresh, but because it is like because obviously you'd have saw that with all the exams you did, but once you get into that exam mode, then it is easy to build that momentum.
Momentum's a big thing in the exams as well. And you did the right thing with starting with that exam. I wouldn't say it probably is the easier of the exams, but it's definitely the way to start off and ramp up from there. If you start off with the architect exams or the developer exams, you're not going to really know what format the questions are in. It's 2 to 3 year exams, a lot of questions, and the fundamentals a lot less questions. It's a lot less time. And it's just easier. It's an easier way to ease you in. The other thing about the AZ 900 is I guarantee you learn something that you didn't know. Very few people would rock up to that without studying a little bit and pass that. I think you'd probably have nearly pass. Right. But there's still like the support pages. They ask you all about the support you can get from Azure, and I didn't really know any of that. So that was the stuff that I learned, which is good because none of the other exams don't cover it.
Well, I said like the support plans and whatnot. That is true. I was the same. It's all that kind of edge stuff that you just don't really think about because you tend to use in your day to day, you tend to find that you'll use a few services and then use a few more services, and then it takes time to do it. Whereas it just kind of like AZ 900, you just get in. It builds confidence. It gives you an idea, obviously, what to expect from a Microsoft exam as well. But no, definitely, and I jumped into the administrator exam. That's a hard exam. I was like, I've done a lot. Like it's AZ. I done the AZ 103 because I bought the exam and I made some mistakes along the way. Obviously, we'll go into some of the training stuff, but I pushed it out. Like there was some bits and bobs I just didn't feel that comfortable. But in actual fact, I was more than exam ready because I threw something like 40, 50, 60 hours into learning because, again, I've done a lot of stuff in Azure in the past, but it's all that, like log analytics, right? Like that, knowing about that, how to, is it KQL, isn't it? It's like, doing all that, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a bit here. And then AZCLI, that kind of threw in, but there was some things that I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I thought I think that's the thing though with certification is the benefits of certifications is that those edge cases, those services that you don't use, and it does really push you to learn.
Totally, and it joins the dots up. There's a lot of things, especially the hardest exam is obviously the architect exam, but because it covers everything. But even the administrator exam is really hard, I think, because for people like me, I'm a developer and I don't have networking skills, so I need to sit and learn all the networking stuff and try and figure it all out. But I did really struggle with the administrator exam. I thought it was quite hard. The AZ 104 was really hard. I find that really difficult. Yeah.
A few people did on Twitter did encourage me to do the 104, and I was just like, I've paid for the 103.
I don't think there's a big difference, to be honest. If it was still there, just do it. So,
I think it's definitely something because obviously I'm now on to the architect exam, and I've got the exam coming up in next week. The first one, obviously, just one thing just to be aware of, people, is that Microsoft do like to change. Obviously, they refresh it, so you'll go the admin exam has been 103. It's now 104. The architect exam it was 300 and 301. It's now 303 and 304. I wonder why they didn't go for the 302. Do you know why?
302 was an upgrade exam. So if you sat, I think if you sat like 300 and 301, you could sit 302 later on when it came out to upgrade.
Right.
So they sometimes do that. Yeah. No.
Cool.
You just I think they refresh the exams. I think it's every 3 months. The questions get updated, so you need to be wary of that. I actually sat the developer exam, and the day before I sat it, they refreshed it with Kubernetes stuff, and that wasn't in there. So when I sat the exam, the first 2 or 3 questions were in Kubernetes, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? So I would always recommend you check the official exam study page and just keep an eye on the bit that says, here's what you'll be tested on, just in case it gets updated, because I did get caught out. And I just scraped a pass on that exam, so I was kind of lucky. But to begin with, you're sitting doing the exam and you're thinking, am I in the right exam here? Why is it asking me this? This wasn't on the course. So that was a wee bit worrying.
Yeah, definitely check, because that's it. That's your Bible, really. Obviously, on Microsoft Learn, that is your Bible. Because it's funny, actually, I did a bunch of Microsoft Learning. I done a webinar last week on Azure Kubernetes service, and it's funny because obviously working at Octopus, we use a lot of Azure, and what we actually do is we've got a cloud product, and it runs on AKS. We use Octopus, Terraform, and AKS to host Octopus Cloud. So it's something. Kubernetes is something that's very interesting. There's great resources as well. Like I think you were talking about Cloud Skills recently, and they've got a Kubernetes course, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, some of the Cloud Skill stuff's been really good recently. I've been using the other stuff a lot. Yeah, the Terraform, they've got a Terraform, instructions to Terraform, and a Kubernetes for beginners, I think it is, which is really good.
Yeah. That's nice. That's nice. So, obviously, I've got the 303. Do you have anything lined up next?
I was actually looking today at the AI 900, so it's the Azure Artificial Intelligence, just because I think it's cool. So that's another fundamentals exam. So I'm not going to say it's really difficult, but it's new stuff to learn. It's all about like cognitive services and machine learning and training laptops to kind of learn stuff and things like that. So it's quite an interesting topic. So I'm going to have a look at that. So I'm probably going to do what you do and book the exam in a month's time and then just sit it. So
it really helps. I think it just keeps you focused.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because if not, I would drift. I would just be like, I'll study a couple of hours tonight, and then the week before it, I'm like, what? Need to get studied. I just cancel watching telly and just make sure, because I hate failing exams.
Well, yeah, it's also the money involved as well. You know, like
it's not cheap. It's really not cheap.
Obviously, one of the things I'd recommend is, where possible, try and get your business to obviously pay for your exam, because you might find that you can get a full training course. So obviously, you can do your Azure DevOps, which is the AZ 400. You've got the security one, that is AZ 500, and the AI one, because obviously with the AZ 900 did touch on AI. I'm quite.
Just cool. A lot of cool stuff. They've got like a learning app for people with disabilities, where you can download the app and you put it over a bit of text and read out the text and work out all the characters and all that. It's really clever stuff. Yeah,
I'm really interested. Got a question for you actually. From Cloud of Thrones, great name. How do you manage your times with study, videos, and social media?
Me, I'm probably on Twitter far too often, as you already know. Well, when I'm studying for exams, I probably put 7 till 9 o'clock at night aside. I used to watch TV and play my Xbox. I actually gave my Xbox away to someone at my last job. I gave it away because I was playing it till like 4 in the morning. So that had to go first of all. I used to watch box sets on TV, stopped watching Netflix for a while. So 2 hours a night if I can, study for the exam. If I pass the exam, then I'll maybe take a month off and then move on to the next one. And not everyone can do that, obviously. So it's difficult, but I've had the odd wee time that here and there during work when I've had a chance to look at something, so I've kind of spun up Microsoft Learn while I'm waiting on a server building or something like that. So yeah, I kind of try and do a wee bit during the day and try and do a wee bit at night.
Definitely. And I say, unfortunately, I've got a wife who demands some sofa time each evening. So with that, I'm the opposite. Like I tend to do it after those hours, like when she's obviously went to bed, or I'm actually big on getting up in the morning and doing it as well before work.
Yep.
I tend to be more of a morning person. Like I do that as well. And what I also do is I know it sounds put my phone into do not disturb as well.
Away, over in the bed, just tuck away.
That's it. Like you do that, same thing. But like you on Twitter, like you must your phone basically just must melt.
It does. It does melt quite a lot.
Like that, because obviously I ask Gregor for advice as well. So he's kind of the master of all things Azure. So, and it is like that's the thing, is find that time. Also, biggest tip I can get. I'm quite lucky, and we're quite flexible in what we can work on. So one of the things that I do is tend to obviously try and do something that, if I'm looking at but one of the benefits, like last week I presented a webinar on Kubernetes. So what I did there was do Azure Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes. Main thing really, the top tips I would say here would be trying to remove distractions. Obviously do still spend time with the family. Saturday, Sunday sessions. I like a Sunday afternoon session. Like, to be honest, like that, you've done your stuff for the week, maybe had a day off, because I'm still big on recharging, but I like that, and like that, just make sure you're still a person. And also, I think you nailed it. I thought, you're over here. Yeah. I think you nailed it. Is take time off in between. It's like that diet, like, and make sure you enjoy it. Go back to have something, play your Xbox.
Yep. No, I mean, you definitely need to enjoy your learning. Don't try and cram it all in. As you said, though, not everyone's got the time, so it is difficult finding time. But just do what you can, I guess. But if you book the exam, you'll make time. I'm a big firm believer of, and there's all the famous the Arnold Schwarzenegger speech was there's 18 hours in a day when you're not sleeping. Just figure something out. Get up early, or listen to a podcast on your way to work. Find a way to spend some time learning. That's a big one. Podcasts on your way to work, or even during your lunch hour or something like that. Just sit and listen to podcasts or something. I don't know. Maybe that's an idea.
Aye, lunch and learns as well. Like obviously, like I think Jeff X has got the PowerShell and a month of lunches like that. Just do something like that. Nip out, grab some. I'm a big fan. Like I've got dogs, so I have to walk the dogs at lunchtime, so I don't actually get that. It's
still very important to take breaks. So don't spend your lunch hour doing work if you can. Definitely get away from your desk and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. Right, we've got another question. Loving the content. Thank you very much. How would you get someone into the first cloud role with just certs?
So that's kind of me. I'm about to. Unofficially, I'm about to start a new job next week as a Azure architect, and I have not really got any hands-on experience apart from studying for the certificates. But if you get the certificates, then you need to show that you kind of need to know what you're doing. You won't be able to just pass the certificates and become an Azure certified solutions architect unless you know this stuff, because it will grill you on a lot of different things. You need to spend time hands-on. There's no getting around it. For a lot of these certs, you need to be building stuff. You need to be using ARM templates. You need to be using Key Vault. You need to be doing all the security stuff. To learn all these things, you need to know what you're talking about. And the more exams you do, the more it'll be the same sort of stuff that will come up. You'll be like, right, okay, I did Key Vault in that exam. I need to do Key Vault in this. And you just get used to it. I would just say learn as much as you can, but do it hands-on. Don't just... The thing I would suggest is the first two exams I failed, the very first two I did, because I just read blog posts and read the docs. I didn't do any hands-on. And I thought, like, I'll just give this a go because I'm new to it, but I really didn't get on well at all. And when I go back and look at where I am now, I did the AZ 104 2 weeks ago, and I know 10 times more than I did then. So just hands-on experience you've got to do. So you need to make time if you're not working with Azure day to day. But obviously, it is easier if you're doing it in your day job.
And also, you get a free allowance as well. Some Azure services are free for 12 months. Also, some are free for all time, like the web app stuff. Like that's the F series is free. I think it's like $75 or $200 in the first month.
So you get, I think it's $200.
Yeah, it's like that. So you know, the good thing is a lot of this stuff is free. Like if you want to play with Azure Active Directory, then yeah, go for it. Obviously, there's some bits there that you might need to obviously do some like the P2 license, etc. But there's definitely enough there that you may have to pay for a little bit. But if you can, what I would recommend, because I've got a friend doing it just now, like I'm recommending, is like focus that 30 days, you know, get as much value out of that 30 days as you can, or you're going to have to spend some money. But even then, the good thing is, so one recommendation, don't use Cosmos DB on your free license, because Cosmos DB is a fantastic product, but I think there was someone I spoke to who once left it on accidentally, and it was £28,000.
Oh, wow.
It's
free
a great
free tier in that now. There's a free trial.
Right.
Yeah, that's more common now. The other thing you want to talk about is within Microsoft Learn, they have a sandbox, so you can, when you're doing your learning, you get a free activation and you can do stuff. So maybe start with that as well.
Yeah. And it's activated actually within your but you obviously sign up for your account, activate, so you can even see the resources as well. So it's not like it's at the sandbox, but it's part of your subscription, which is really good. You can go in and see what's sort of, you know, like for instance, you spin up a virtual machine. It's not just a virtual machine you get public IP, you do get the virtual machine or the compute resources, then it's storage, then it's, you know, private IP, public IP, NSGs, etc. So you can play about with that.
The EZ104 has got a really good learning track where you actually spin up virtual machines and you put in an NSG, you put in a virtual network, you've got the NSG rules and stuff like that, and you can do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's great. And the thing is as well, there's so many free resources. Because that, to go back to what I was saying earlier on as well, was this used to all cost an arm and a, you know, it used to cost a lot of money. I love the fact that both of us have got Iron Brew. Obviously, I've got the diabetic version. And it used to cost so much money. Like Microsoft Learn, I think, actually, Gregor, I think it was one of your tweets that I started looking at Microsoft Learn and then started looking at the docs, because the docs are absolutely fantastic now. So
the thing about Microsoft Learn is if you've viewed that months ago and you haven't been back, you'll be surprised. It's updated all the time. The content is just getting better and better. I mean, if you look at it now, the content, have a look for like AZ104, for example. So if you go to All Paths and just do AZ104, some of the stuff in there is brilliant.
Yeah, and what I would say is the search has definitely improved recently. So like that. So there's a few things. So you can go straight into the docs, right? And then you want to do Azure. Here you go. You want to learn about app services. There you go. And then this is all the doc side of things. But it's, for instance, if you want to go back. So this is just the docs. There's so many things. Like for instance, like you want to talk like Express Route, for instance, you can go in and there's loads of great stuff there as well. But honestly, this is become in the last say 12, 18 months, this has become my main resource when it comes to Azure.
Same here.
So, for instance, if you wanted to do the administrator exam, which
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah. So you've got here, and obviously, the thing I like about it is they've now kind of incentivized it, they've kind of gamified it a little bit, where you can, obviously, I am a level 10. You must be like wizard level.
No, I'm 9, I think, to be honest with you. I blasted it for a while, and then I left it for a while, and then I came back. But I think I'm about to get to 10, but there's a couple of Azure advocates that have done the whole lot, which is like ridiculous.
Wow.
I've done every course.
But this is really cool. I really enjoyed this. Like, for instance, if you wanted to then look at the types of certification. So say you want to do, so obviously the fundamentals, definitely do the fundamentals. It's cheaper as well to do it. But say you wanted to do, this is the one that I did, obviously, but you've got some of the ones, if you wanted to do Azure DevOps, which is a great platform as well. You've got your Microsoft 365. There's loads of one here, but if you also wanted to do, say, there's loads of stuff here, but say you want to do this one. This I really like, because you come in and you've got all the exams, right? And then some of these I haven't, because obviously I've done the 103, but you've got it all listed here. So if you wanted to do the prerequisites, there's so much resources.
That's all free.
Yeah, and that no, I'm thinking the fundamentals. Yeah, so for if you're in the UK, it's 113, but that's also excluding VAT, I believe. So works out about 137 pounds.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you can do the good thing with COVID is you can do it remotely as well. You don't obviously have to go in. The experience it was a really positive experience for me. What I would say, big
At
tip,
home?
yeah, I done it in the house. Did you do it? Well, sure.
So I would always do them in the house. I did the first two certification centres, but yeah, I would do them at home now. Definitely, we can talk about that as well because there's quite a few things to cover when it comes to that.
Yeah, let's talk about it now. I think it's when you're ready, when you've done it all.
I always used to recommend doing your first one in a test centre. But now I would probably change that. The one thing you need to talk about is during COVID, all the labs are turned off, so you won't get any labs. So you won't get any go into the Azure portal and do these 10 steps. You don't get that in a minute because they've had resourcing issues. So that's off at the minute. Yeah. So the tips for doing it at home. Let me just think. I've got a blog post on this. Let me just remind myself what my tips are. Yeah. So there's some rules.
Run the system check.
Yes. Rule number 1: run the system check. So that's a little. The exams come up in a kind of Pearson VUE bit of software, so you need to make sure everything's shut down. You need to run the system check before you book the exam, just to make sure that it works on your laptop. So I've got a laptop and a big screen, and I'll only have run the software on my laptop because I turn my big monitor off, because you're not really allowed to have multiple monitors. That's one thing. So test that for sure. Make sure you've got a decent microphone and your laptop's charged. One of the funny story is a guy in my work failed because he pulled his laptop lead out and he went like that, bent down to pick it up, and he's left the camera. So he's an automatic fail. And then he didn't even know, and all he did was pulled out the power cable. Failed. So yeah. The thing about doing them online is you're not allowed to have any. Your desk's got to be completely clear. You've got to take a photograph of your ID, so your passport or your license. You've got to take a photograph to the left, right, forward, and back of where you're sitting, so there's nothing written down. If you've got multiple monitors, you need to turn the monitors off or pull the cables out. What else we've got? There's no paper, so you can't take notes. But within the software, there's a little whiteboard thing. It's better than an exam because they give you a pen and a bit of paper and you can kind of draw diagrams. It's not easy to draw diagrams on the software, but it's there if you want it. Nobody's allowed to enter or leave the room. So if someone walks in the room, you instantly fail. I've seen that happen before. You're not allowed to. I got pulled up for reading a question out loud. So I just forgot, and I was like, okay, blah 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 blah, and then the wee person who's watching you, so I'm trying to think of the name of the person just sitting watching you, but that popped up and said, stop reading the question out loud, and I'm like, okay, that's just so that you're not recording it using some other tool.
I think as well, it's also so you don't have someone in another room then kind of pipe.
Yeah. What else have we got?
You're not allowed to mouth it either.
You're not allowed to cover your face. I've seen people, somebody got failed for doing that with their beard because they thought they were doing something about concealing what they were going like this, and I don't know. But I've heard that.
One of my favourite things.
I've been sitting and yawning and stuff like that, and people are like, "Why are you yawning?" And I'm like, "Just
tired."
So there's certain rules that you need to stick by. I mean, they're there for good reason, and you can read it before. So they are strict, but if you know what you're doing, then they're fine. But I would definitely make sure your laptop's charged. You don't want your laptop running out of battery.
One tip I'd give you: don't use a laptop.
Really?
Yeah, because what it is I've got two massive screens. I didn't actually sit my exam here. I give my wife, so she's come in. She works for government. She comes in, plugs her Surface Book in, right? And she's got these two now ultra wide curved 34-inch monster. I took her 23-inch ultra wide, and obviously you need a camera. But for me, it was I wanted the screen, the real estate. So if you can find a desktop like that, right. Definitely, because obviously that's the thing. You can't even just close your laptop, can you?
No, I know.
So if you can definitely do on a desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. What else was I going to say? Definitely. So if you book your exam for, say, 9 o'clock at night, you can turn up half an hour early. So definitely turn up half an hour early. The wee button on the exam page will say begin exam half an hour before your actual exam is meant to start. So get in, make sure you've got your photograph, because you have to do it on your mobile. You have to take a photograph of your ID, and sometimes the pictures, and it just a wee bit unsettling. Like 3 or 4 times my internet cut out, and I was like, "Oh, my exam's about to start." And it's kind of, you don't want to start an exam thinking, "Oh, that was quite a lot of effort." That all sounds like trying to put you off, but you can do it in the house, and you don't need to travel to the test centres. So I would definitely try and do them in the house.
Well, I much prefer it, because the thing is as well is like, it's also, you don't have to then, because I've done them in exam centres in the past, and if I'm being honest, like some of the exam centres weren't that nice to be in.
Yeah, a couple that are like that, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's like, you definitely do it if you can. But definitely,
yeah, the first one I did in Edinburgh, it was like the hottest day of the year. The windows were all closed, the doors were sitting like absolutely baking, thinking this is horrendous.
It's like, and the screens on your phone are generally a little bit bigger as well than what they get. You know, like, I remember I was like, what?
Scroll bars within scroll bars. You're like, what?
Like, oh, what's this question? Yeah, no, definitely do it from home. But I mean, it's really, go for it.
No, the other thing to talk about is practice tests. So, what's your experience of good and bad practice tests? Because some of the vendors are pretty good, and some of them aren't so great.
I've had mixed experience. I think WizLab. WizLabs for me personally were really great. When I was doing the learning, I really tried to do as much as I possibly could. So like I've done some on Pluralsight, I've done some on like Skylines Academy. Big shout out on to Nick Collier on Skylines Academy. I've really loved his. I really like his learning, his courses. So I kind of done that. Then I also done Microsoft Learn, and then I jumped into, obviously there's free practice tests, like with Skyline you get the practice test. WizLabs for me was great. I used Measure Up.
Yeah, I'm a bit like that with them. Yeah, I think I found Measure Up questions weren't really on. If I had to review them after the exam, I would say they're not on topic.
No. I think, to be honest, it felt like it was almost like an architect type exam. It felt like it was. I think the thing that I liked, like I bought a bunch of Measure Up tests. Right, it was one of those like 5 deal. You know, you get 3, you get buy 3, get 5 or whatever. Right, and I bought it thinking, right, brilliant. It also the exam guarantee. So as long as you've done 2 tests over 90%, I think you know if you went and failed the exam. But the opposite thing happened for me where I done Measure Up and it really smashed my confidence. It was like I've done, at this point I've done like 3 or 4 different courses. I've been across Microsoft Learn. I've done the docs. I've spent like 60 hours on my time. I'm like, I'm ready to go, right? I'm ready to go, and then I do Measure Up and I've got 60%. Like, wait,
been there before. Yeah, that's not what you want, really. They might turn around and say it's deliberately hard, but I just thought it wasn't really in line with what I got asked in the exam, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird. So I kind of ditched them a while back, to be honest. I think I used them maybe the first exams I sat and I failed them. And I thought I'm going to try something else. So yeah, I mean, practice tests. I've got on a blog post here. I've got Skylines Academy, Pluralsight. I used to use Udemy because Scott. What's his second name? Scott. I forgot his second name.
Hanselman?
No, there's a. Oh, I can picture his face. Okay, I'll come to me in a minute. The guy Scott has got some Udemy courses that are really good. He's an Azure trainer. Sometimes I've used WizLabs as well and Cloud Skills, so I've used all of them, to be honest. And yeah, Cloud Skills, WizLabs, and Skylines Academy are probably my 3 favourite.
Yeah, and the thing I found I was surprised as well was WizLabs, etc. Skylines, they're all super affordable. Like I bought my AZ 103 exam prep because funny story, I actually had kind of delayed because it did smash my confidence quite a bit, and I was really worried about it. But I was doing a talk actually at an Azure user group on the Thursday night, and I was like, I should push out that exam. And then at that point, it was more than 24 hours before.
Right.
So like, no, you can't do it. And I'm like, oh. So I went and got Wiz Labs, and I was like, I just like smashed through them, and then suddenly I felt confident, and I still passed the next day. It was at like 1 o'clock with like an 80% mark, and I was like, and that's after like a few months of not really touching it. Don't do what Derek done. Just once you went through everything, use all these resources. If you're getting 80-90%, honestly, the good chance you'll pass.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. The thing what I tend to do in some of the exams is I'll set the practice test at the start and I'll go, right, I've absolutely no idea, but when you do it in practice mode, it'll give you links to the exam docs. So I'll maybe get like 10-15% at the start, and then 3 or 4 weeks down the line, I'll go back and I'll see that I've now got 40%, let's say, and I'm thinking, right, okay, so I feel confident in this area. What area am I really weak in? And then I'll continue studying, and then at the end, I'll kind of gauge. So I kind of do 3 steps just to kind of gauge my learning. I kind of try to do that. But like you, if I'm getting 60 or 70% in these practice tests, normally that's a good indication that you're just about ready. Once I'm at that point, I'll probably book the exam 2 weeks after, and then I'll just blast studying for 2 weeks and then just go for it.
No, that sounds like great advice. And also, one of the things that we are that's still in beta just now is Microsoft Learn TV. So that's something I've been playing about with recently. Let's see, here we go. So it is actually streaming 24/7. It is still in beta or preview. So it is something, if you want to learn about studying images of Earth, like a NASA astronaut, check it out. But yeah, I mean, this is still very much. I
asked on Twitter about Learn TV because I was a bit confused about how it's like a TV thing, and so the feedback I got was it's in beta. They're going to be adding a lot more content behind the scenes, and they'll produce like the TV listings of what's on when, which will be great. You'll be able to see what's coming up and then bookmark it and record it and stuff like that. So yeah, Scott Duffy was the guy I was trying to think of.
Right.
Scott Duffy's got a lot of Udemy courses, which are quite cheap as well. But yeah, Learn TV kind of in beta.
And the good thing is it's still got lists, it's still got like the build 2020. It's got listing obviously to Channel 9. So if you want to learn, like I know like Able recently has been doing a lot of really cool stuff with the ARM templates as well. This is another resource. It's probably not more exam related, but definitely check out Channel 9. There's really great stuff here. Like here it is here. So obviously he's talking about ARM template output. So that's like, I think it's every Tuesday or something.
Yeah, every Tuesday.
And so there's loads of great stuff there. It depends on, also it's another question actually for you, Gregor, is I'm a visual learner, right? So what I do is I'm big, like I remember at university, right? It's like if you're told something, then you'll remember about 30% of it. Then if you're shown it, it's like 60 or 60%. If you do it, it's like 90%. So like that, I mean, we're all different sorts of learners. So what might work for you might not work for me. Like, I'm big on videos. I like seeing and then playing. What about yourself?
Me too. So what I tend to do is if I'm watching a video or something, I'll actually write notes out, because I tend to find that if I'm writing the notes out myself, I'll put it into a format that will kind of highlight the points that I want. But like you, I'm visual as well, and I like watching videos of things. But I learn the most. I learn the most from being hands-on. Like I like breaking things and trying things. There's nothing better than like spinning something up and going, right, why is that not working? Try and figure it out and then go, right, So like the biggest example for me was building virtual networks. Like when I first sat the exams, when I first started learning Azure, I didn't build any networks. I was just reading it and going, right, okay, so that goes there. And I didn't get it at all. I thought I got it, but I really didn't. And then when I was doing the said 104, I spent hours just building VNets and stuff like that and just figuring it all out. And when I sat the exam this time, I thought, I know a lot more than I did the last time. In fact, I actually felt embarrassed with the fact that I tried to pass it the first time, because I had just read stuff and I was like, that's completely wrong. So I'm same as you, hands-on and visual, definitely.
YouTube as well, by the way. Obviously, we're streaming on YouTube, so obviously there's loads of great stuff out there.
Yeah, they've got their own Microsoft YouTube, and hardly anybody knows about it. I think it's just Microsoft. I think it's just YouTube/Microsoft, but they've got lots of great stuff on there.
Aye. That's it. And I mean, as well as that, also, if you want to look at things like some of the coding stuff, one I would recommend is obviously GitHub. particularly, obviously, if you're a developer, you know exactly what GitHub is. If you're an ops, you probably know what GitHub is as well. But like, what I would recommend is looking at the ARM templates as well, because ARM for me, right? ARM for me was a bit of a jump. It's ARM templates, GitHub.
It's hard to learn if you're not a dev, I think, because you're looking at it going, "What on earth is this?" You know what I mean? It's almost starting to have to write code.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And this is the thing is there's loads of great tools out there that you can use. Like, I'm slightly biased. Obviously, I use Octopus for this. And like this, there's so many quick start templates. Like, you can come in, say, for instance, you want to do 1 VM, 2 NICs, boom, right? Select to deploy to Azure, and we're off.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, that's it. You can do it. Change, obviously, that. But like that, AZ CLI, I did do a demo last week. I won't lie, it wasn't great. But obviously, check out that there. Obviously, definitely get in like the VNet stuff as well. Like, even coming from an ops background, I generally left networking to people who are more interested in networking. But it's like that. If you want to learn about subnetting, you know, there's loads of great content out there because you do. It's what I would say is software networking has greatly simplified it. You know, obviously you want to do a /24, that's a really big network. You know, obviously /32, that's one. So obviously like that, you can go to 8. So there's loads of great stuff there. You want to think about considering things like, you know, obviously subnet types, you know, subnet A's, B's, C's. There's loads of great content there. But when it, you know, there is so much out there. Microsoft is doing some great stuff. Pluralsight, I'm still a big fan of Pluralsight.
Check Pluralsight out.
Yeah, Skylines, etc. There's so many things out there. Right, okay. So I think we're getting to the end of today's time. I think we've actually overran a little bit. Any questions from people? I think we've answered them all. I think that's everything from me as well, Gregor. Do you have anything?
I've got a couple of bullet points that I wrote up just for advice, just kind of like general summing things up. So I put things like don't start studying and then put it off. So book the exam and go for it. You've got a deadline, it will make you focus. Read the questions carefully, even in the practice tests. So you'll know what I'm talking about. There'll be loads of times where you think, oh, it's B, and then you've not read the question correctly. So all the questions there's always one wee bit in a question that kind of puts you, this is what they're after. The one thing that's also true is there used to be, when I did the MCSD exams, A, B, C, and D answers, 2 were completely nonsense and 2 were like, it was either A or B, depending on the answer. But now all 4 answers could be the correct answer. You know what I mean? They don't have any, you can't straight away go, it's definitely not those 2. So that's another thing to be wary of. So basically, no exam questions have answers which are wildly wrong. You won't get asked about ARM templates and C will be talking about something completely different. That's just not happening anymore. I wrote down take the exam once you're fairly confident. Definitely take your time. Always check the official exam page just for any updates just before you sit the exam. Mark questions for review if you're not sure and you want to come back to it. I've actually reviewed some questions and then another questions kind of gave me the answer indirectly, or kind of made me remember. I've had that happen before. And no one really likes sitting exams. So yeah, it's just a thing we have to do. And if you do feel it, just book it again quickly and get back on the horse. Try and sit it again as quickly as possible.
I've failed them.
Yeah, I've failed 4. Yeah, I failed the same one twice in a row. That was just from poor planning.
The thing is like that is, you know, like it's like fail faster, try harder. You know, obviously try not to fail, but at the same time, as I've thankfully I've only done it the once, but it was. Do you know, honestly though, it was the best exam I ever sat because what it did do was it was like, oh wait a minute, I need to take this seriously. I thought it would be easy, obviously, but yeah.
I sat the DevOps exam thinking it would be mostly Azure DevOps, without really looking at the study material, and failed it because it was not just Azure DevOps. In fact, hardly any of it is Azure DevOps. It's other DevOps things. I think people think the Azure DevOps 400 exam is all about Azure DevOps. It's absolutely not. maybe 10% of it was about Azure DevOps. It's all about Jenkins and GitHub and Git and all these other things. People don't realise that, and I wasn't. So I failed the beta because I thought it's going to be Azure DevOps. I've been using this day in, day out. I'll pass this. So yeah, try and be prepared. Don't do what I did and kind of just assume that you'll know this stuff. That's never a good idea.
Well, you just taught me something.
I think you probably think the Azure DevOps exam is Azure DevOps. It's not. It's not.
That's what I've not, because it's on my list, because I want to do the architect, then I want to do, it was Azure DevOps or the security.
You should probably look at the DevOps exam, because it's probably got a bit of Terraform. It's probably got AKS. It's got lots of things that aren't Azure DevOps. It's got a couple of things with Azure DevOps, but it's not like heavily weighted.
Check that out. Okay, so I think that's it. Right, we're going to wrap this up. Greg, honestly, buddy, this has been absolutely fantastic. As always, to be honest, I like hanging out with you anyway. Talk about Azure. What's your Twitter, Gregor?
Gregor_Suttie.
Excellent. So obviously check out. Sorry. Oh, yeah, there we go. Check out obviously Gregor Suttie _Suttie on Twitter. I'm DevOpsDerek. If you do have any questions, obviously do reach out. But thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And I'll be back next week at the same time, same bat channel. And until then, have a great evening.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.